you very much, Susanna. Well, some important points there and lots to think about. I know that Michael has a number of points that he would like to make, but I'm going to ask him first to respond to what Susanna has said.
Thank you. Yes, as you say, Susanna raises a number of interesting points. What I'd like to do, I think, is respond to these points one by one. Now, I've read the same research as Susanna, and I think it's interesting that we don't agree on the evidence. So firstly, the point about game playing being an unproductive activity, a waste of time, I believe were the words you used. Now, this may be a widely held opinion, but to be convincing, it needs more evidence. Also, if playing computer games is a waste of time, then you might as well say that watching television is a waste of time. Reading magazines is a waste of time. Chatting to your friends online is a waste of time. Maybe they are, but there doesn't seem to be any evidence for this. It's just an opinion. So you could also say that all these activities are perfectly valid and useful. Okay, Susanna's second point, that players' cognitive skills are only improved in a very limited way. Now, there's actually very little evidence for this. Other research seems to support the idea that gaming can have a significant effect on cognitive ability. For example, there's an article published by a team of researchers from the psychology department at the University of Illinois. The title of this is The Effects of Video Game Playing on Attention, Memory and Executive Control. And the authors found some very important cognitive differences between expert game players and non-gamers. Now, there's no doubt that expert game players performed better in certain areas. They track objects more effectively. They identify changes to objects. The reaction times are faster, and they can switch more quickly from one task to another. Now, I could give you more examples, but let's move on to Susanna's third point, that playing violent video games can lead to violence in real life, to a more aggressive society. I think we have to be careful here. As Susanna said, a lot of people believe this to be true, but I don't agree with the interpretation of the research done by Bensley and Van Eenwink. I don't think it's as simple as you suggest, Susanna. Yes, they did find that playing an aggressive video game was often followed by aggressive behaviour, but this behaviour was very brief. And more importantly, the research only identified this behaviour in children aged 4 years to 8 years, not in older children. In other words, it's not certain whether the effect is the same in other groups of gamers of different ages. Also, the research done by John Vaig doesn't conclude that playing video games leads to violent behaviour. What he is actually saying is that some gang members go to places like gaming halls to find the kind of people who might be persuaded to join their gang. This is not the same thing. It's not playing video games that leads to gang culture. It's the places where young people play the games. This is like saying that drug dealers try to sell their drugs to people in cafes and bars, so going to cafes and bars leads to drug use. Now, we must be careful about working out causes and effects. A context shouldn't be mistaken for a cause. Susanna said that playing video games is linked to antisocial behaviour in children. I'd like to say that I think this is her strongest point. There's definitely plenty of evidence to support this view, although the evidence is not consistent. The piece of research Susanna quoted is quite convincing, although there's other research which has found that antisocial effects in children are not significant. But, as I say, there's quite a substantial body of evidence which suggests a possible link between playing video games and a degree of antisocial behaviour. Moving on to Susanna's fifth point now. I'm sorry, but this point is really not very convincing. Think about what she said. I've seen children play for hours. Well, I've seen a lot of interesting things too, but that doesn't make them scientific facts. Kids get moody when they can't do what they want. Now, is that really news? Do kids who don't play video games not get moody? This is just personal experience. Maybe playing video games can be addictive, but where's the evidence? Another point, addiction is linked to criminality. I don't think so. It's a big step from playing a video game to committing a crime. If you're going to make claims like these, you must provide real evidence, not just a generalization with no support. Susanna, I know that you'll want to come back at me on all of this, but let me just say a couple of more things, if I may.